All right, it looks like we are live. We got a couple people flowing in. Roxy, Mary, Rhonda, Angela, Linda, Jane, good to see you all. Happy to have you. Welcome to another episode of Endless Urgency. I am your host, Democratic strategist Mike Nellis. I am very excited to be here with my guest, Allison Gill, who is kind of a friend of mine. You're like an internet friend of mine, I would say, more than anything. Really stepped in and helped defend me when Laura Loomer and the House Judiciary Committee was coming after me last year on a whole lot of horseshit, which is probably a whole other conversation. We're going to be getting into a bunch of different topics today. We're going to start by talking about Donald Trump ripping away Kamala Harris's Secret Service, and we'll probably get into DOJ weaponization there and just general weaponization of the government. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the Epstein developments that have come up today. We're also going to talk about the disastrous 72 hours of the CDC with RFK and everything else that's been going on there. But while we're getting connected, please, if you will, hit the heart button for us to push this up the algorithm so that more people will see it. It makes a huge difference for the live so that more people join. It makes a huge difference after so that more people get a chance to see it in Substack's algorithm. And then please drop us a comment. Tell us where you're watching this from. If you have thoughts or comments for me or for Allison, I will work them in as we go through the conversation. Allison, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for having me. Yeah, we've gone back and forth over the years now, supporting each other and supporting each other's work. I know we worked tirelessly on the Kamala Harris campaign together and on the Biden campaign in 2020. So it's really good to see you, and it's great to be here. I really appreciate you having me on.
You too, and I just want to say I appreciated you having me on your show a year ago during the height of all the Laura Loomer shit, because I needed a few friends to kind of come. I was not a content creator the way that I am now. I didn't have the audience that I had now, so I didn't really have a lot of people to back me up when a crazy person was trying to destroy my life. So you were one of the few people that stepped up and I think created an entry ramp for me to be able to do this. So I just always really, really appreciate it. Let's get into the first topic that I want to cover, which is, and this is really a broader topic than the specific entry point for it, but Donald Trump today has canceled Kamala Harris's Secret Service, and it sounds like Joe Biden had extended the service for a little while. You get it for 6 months. Biden had kind of extended it for some period of time, unclear to me how long. But it makes a lot of sense that Kamala Harris, having been the presidential nominee, having also been the first Black woman to be VP, and given the state of our country right now, to have extended Secret Service makes a lot of sense to me. But just like Trump has ripped away other details from folks, he's ripped away security clearances from folks. He's also ripped up fake security clearances for a lot of folks. He keeps taking away Adam Kinzinger's security clearance like every 45 days. He and Tulsi Gabbard get really proud of themselves when they do that. It's just this dumb weaponization of government to please the conservative base that they have. And Allison, I want to get your reaction to what Trump is doing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I believe Joe Biden had approved 18 months of Secret Service protection for former Vice President Kamala Harris. And it's, again, like you said, it's wrapped up in this larger weaponization against his political enemies, right?
Yeah.
What he himself argued against when he was trying to get immunity for himself from the Supreme Court. But he even, I think, promoted Ed Martin to be his weaponization czar, which is supposed to go after weaponization, but actually really creates it in a way. So I think, when you talk about these things, you talk about the executed search warrant on John Bolton's house. This goes all the way back to his first term when he went after Jim Comey and Andy McCabe and any number of his political enemies. And when you bring Kash Patel into the mix, who has a list of people that he wanted to go after, this is, like most things, shocking, but not surprising. But I am concerned for her safety, as Joe Biden was when he signed the extension. But he's going to keep doing this, taking away people's security clearances. You mentioned even fake security clearances like Adam Kinzinger. I talk to the Vindmans all the time, and they're like, I haven't had a security clearance since I was at the White House all those years ago.
Right.
But most of what he does is performative anyhow. We saw it this week in Washington, D.C., with the overcharging of several people who were supposedly or had allegedly committed felony assault against law enforcement officers. Sandwich Guy, Sidney Reed, Mr. Summers. There's all kinds of cases now where they're having to drop their felony charges because federal grand juries are not returning indictments. And if any of these go to trial, like the Bolton stuff or the Office of Special Counsel investigation into Jack Smith for violating the Hatch Act, they're going to have a real hard time and to get a conviction. I think of the Abrego case with these two ridiculous trumped up charges based on triple hearsay evidence that are their star witnesses are multiple felons who've been deported 5 times, but they get asylum and work permits to roll up a low-level person in the chain of the smuggling, which hasn't even been proven to be true. They don't want to go to trial because they'll be embarrassed. But I think at this point, they're sort of beyond embarrassment. They're shameless, if you will. And I
Yeah.
think we see that with them, Judge Box of Wine, Janine Pirro, not caring about the fact that she can't indict a ham sandwich, literally.
Right, right. And I think let's talk about why he's doing it, because it's one part grievance, and I would argue that the entire modern Republican Party runs on grievances. It doesn't run on actual values or policy solutions. It's all who do we hate and how do we upset them. But there's sort of a darker side of it that I think is really important too. Is Trump is going after Act Blue, for example, and is costing Act Blue a lot of money, is disrupting the Democratic Party's fundraising apparatus. And I think what he's going to do is he's going to keep going after people that he believes, one, he owes some revenge to for perceived slights or real slights in the past. And he's also going to go after people that he thinks are effective at refuting him on his bullshit. I think particularly for Bolton, like one, the worst thing that Bolton's going to have is an accidental couple papers in his house that he may have kept like when he left office. Fine. That shit happens. And again, by the way, Donald Trump did the same thing. The actual problem isn't necessarily that it happened. It's that Donald Trump lied about it and then tried to destroy the documents, did destroy documents. That's what he actually got in trouble for. But with Bolton, he's really going after Bolton because he keeps speaking out about Trump on Russia and in Ukraine. And so he views Bolton as a legitimate, credible threat to parts of his base. He's going to keep going after anybody that he thinks is visible and out there and at risk to him. And that's why we've got to be extra vigilant. And even though John Bolton himself is a tremendous asshole, he is not somebody that I like or think is a good person. Bolton is responsible for many of the worst foreign policy decisions in American history, including the Iraq War. He doesn't deserve the treatment that he's getting. And I think it's an example of how far past the Rubicon we are, where Trump doesn't even know who his friends are or who's generally broadly on his side. He can't keep his coalition together relatively.
No, he's having a really hard time. And a
Yeah.
lot of this, like you said, the reason he's doing this, it's for authoritarian appearance, right?
Mm.
It's for revenge and retribution. And it's also just for the appearance, for the red meat for his base, like you said. This is a long been a habit of his to where he says, hey, Zelensky, you don't actually have to investigate. Just say you are. Or when he went to Jeffrey Clark at the Department of Justice and said, you don't actually have to investigate Georgia for election stuff. Just say you are, and the Republicans in Congress and I will do the rest.
Right.
It's more about the punishment of the organization or the person. They have to spend money to defend themselves. It's a disruption of their lives. Those 2 IRS audits that he sicked on Jim Comey and Andy McCabe, for example, were incredibly disruptive and punitive. Even if you come out winning, it's still something that you have to go through. And when we look at the complaints, they're just completely meritless. When I think about John Bolton, uh, you know, they just show up with a search warrant and say, this is important. We need to go through this due process. But when you think about what happened with Trump and his classified documents, as you were saying, in a normal course of things, John Bolton would be, someone would reach out and say, hey, do you have this stuff? Give it back. And if he didn't give it back, then maybe you go into what happened with Trump. You dick around with the National Archives for 13 months, get a referral to DOJ, ignore them, force the DOJ to subpoena you, then have them come down to Mar-a-Lago, and you only give them 38 documents when you were holding hundreds. And then, find out later that there's actually stuff in there. Then you search, and then the FBI actually calls your lawyer ahead of time and informs them that they're coming to your house, and they don't wear their FBI jackets. They wear khakis and, are nice and shake hands with people and don't go into locked closets.
Right.
So it's turning not only the justice system on its head, but it's the opposite of what Trump had to go through. The whole purpose of the investigation from the Office of Special Counsel into Jack Smith is that Senator Tom Cotton made a referral saying Jack Smith and the investigations into Trump went too fast. Can you believe that?
Right.
Insinuating that, we did have trials on the calendar in March and May of 2024, well before the election, but those were all, canceled when the Supreme Court crowned him king and gave him immunity. But to insinuate that the investigations into Donald Trump were too fast
Right.
is mind-blowing to anybody that was following them at all.
Yeah, what also drives me nuts is we're never really gonna know the full extent of these things too, because they've covered up so much of it. I mean, and it's taken so long. The thing about Trump is, and I say this all the time, is nothing that has happened in his life makes him believe that he'll ever be held accountable for anything that he's ever done. Anything he's said, anything he's done, any law that he's broken, what he does in office. Obviously, the Supreme Court now has validated that for him. Also, luckily, validated it for Obama and made it an easy scapegoat for them to just like bitch and complain about Obama when they can't do anything about it either, based on the same metric. I want to because there's a lot of comments in here about Sandwich Guy, and I want to give my take on Sandwich Guy for a second, which is, I think throwing a sandwich at a law enforcement officer is a stupid thing to do, and you shouldn't fucking do it. And I'm going to be pretty clear about that. I know that there are some people out there that are drawing murals of Sandwich Guy. Fine, whatever. I get it. It's funny, but don't throw sandwiches at cops. I think somebody posted in here, so it was a waste of a perfectly good sandwich, which is the way I sort of love that. But what I will tell you about Sandwich Guy that pisses me off is one, they were like the entire conservative media apparatus, and I did a bunch of conservative media the week that he threw that sandwich, and they asked me about it repeatedly. They made it their entire personality. Oh, the radical left is throwing sandwiches at cops, and we're going to throw this guy in prison for the rest of his life. He's going to get the maximum sentence. It's going to be all over for this guy. He's ruined his life. And I'm like, man, you threw a sandwich at a cop. It's dumb. Don't do that. But it's not the end of that guy's life. He's got a lot of life ahead of him, and he's not going to be going to prison for the rest of his life for that. And they got nothing but ink to spill on Sandwich Guy, but nothing to say when Donald Trump pardons cop beaters at the January 6th insurrection, and when there's mass shootings like there were this weekend in Minnesota, and we should maybe talk a little bit about that too. I should have put that in the notes here. Is they don't want to talk about dealing with the gun problem in America. And I say this as a gun owner, like there is a gun problem in America that we need to address. They don't want to talk about any serious policy solutions on the mental health crisis that we face, particularly with young men. They don't want to talk about what we can do to better secure our schools or our churches and make people feel safe. But what do they want to do? They want to talk about this person being trans. And 4 of the last 5,200 mass shooters have been trans, 0.01%. But they've got a ton of ink to spill on that. They've got no ink to spill on solutions. And that just tells me, again, it is a party of grievances. It is a party of hate. It is not a party of solutions that are going to improve people's lives, especially not for our goddamn kids. And that, as somebody with a 6-year-old who's in school right now, actually, he's probably home by now upstairs, causing God knows what kind of trouble. His mom gets him when I'm doing the show. But it frightens me what this party is and how desperate I don't want to create a Democratic Party version of that. And I want to get your reaction to that.
No, I agree with you. And when you talk about the Sandwich Guy and the larger implications of the fact that they pardoned people who beat the shit out of cops on January 6th. Also, that's something that Representative LaMonica McIver brought up in her motions to dismiss and compel discovery in the case trumped up charges against her for assaulting law enforcement when actually she was the one that was assaulted. And so we see this all the time. We saw it with the flag burning executive order where Donald Trump said, I know, I know I can't tell you to not burn a flag, but if you do, we're going to prosecute you. I'm going to put you in jail
Right.
for a year.
He's
But
just making
only
laws up. Like, it's ridiculous. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, it's okay. But because the thing is only when it's in, you know, hand in hand with another crime. So, like, if I come to your house, Mike, and I murder you while burning a flag, I will be charged with murder, right? And so that's kind of what the executive order said, because they know that they can't get around the flag burning is covered by the First Amendment.
Right.
So this week, a veteran burned a flag out front of the White House and was arrested. And as it turns out, he's being charged with 2 Class B misdemeanors for lighting a fire where it's not supposed to be, not for burning a flag. So
Right.
he called his bluff, and we see that kind of thing.
And
All
that'll
the
get
time.
thrown out too. Like, that'll get thrown out. It's not going to be worth the court's time, and somebody's going to get rid of it.
Yeah, I know, I concur. And instead, like you said, of focusing on things like, and I'm assuming Minnesota, the state, at the state level, maybe at the state legislature level, I know Tim Walz has spoken about this. They have to do something about guns in that state. They've had a real rough go. They just, that this shooting was on the heels of another shooting of 6 people. And then, of course, the political assassination. that occurred there the day of the No Kings rally, I think is evidence that something has to be done. And of course, there are mountains of evidence that something should have been done long ago, going back to Columbine, and even earlier than that. But to go after Sandwich Guy, but defend guns in mass shootings you're right. It makes no political sense. And I think that people are waking up to the idea that it's a bottom versus top scenario and not a left versus right scenario. And historically, there's always some large catalyst. And I spoke to Heather Cox Richardson about this earlier today that wakes people up to that fact. And back during the Civil War, it was the Fugitive Slave Act, where people, the feds were coming in and snatching people out of their communities. And people on both sides, abolitionists and not, were upset by this because of how invasive and intrusive that is. And we're seeing it now. And I think that things like that, things like the fact that we can't get health care, things like mass shootings, are waking folks up to again, because this is cyclical. It happens, I don't know, every 60 years or so, to the fact that, and now it's the wealth gap is the biggest that it's ever been in history. And with the signing of the billionaire bailout bill, it was the largest transfer of wealth in the history of the world, from one class to the ruling class, from the 99% to the 1%. And I think that is what's motivating people the most. And at least that's the underpinning of all of the other things that we're talking about.
Well, and we're living through the second Gilded Age. I think that's what we should call it. It's essentially what it is. It's the Gilded Age on steroids. Like, honestly, like the rich people of that era would be embarrassed by what the rich people of this era are doing, because at least folks in the Gilded Age were trying to build something. They were trying to build a country. I feel like they are just strip mining what we have left for parts and then hoping they can make it to Mars in time for the planet to collapse. So it's an issue. I want to go back to two things that you said. The first is on guns. And I think there is a necessary conversation and debate that needs to happen on what we do at a federal level, because one of the biggest problems that we have is that we have, half the states have strong gun control laws and the other half doesn't. And that's a problem. And so you hear a lot of conservatives go, look at all the gun violence in Chicago, when Chicago has strong gun laws that proves to you that gun laws don't work. Well, about 50% of all crimes come from guns that are bought in Indiana. So if I can cross the border real quick and go over to Hammond and buy a quick firearm, or at least circumvent the rules in a way that makes it easier for me to get it versus what you have to do in Chicago or Illinois, that's a bit of an issue. Same problem happens in California and Nevada. Like, Nevada is a huge issue for the state of California to prevent people from getting access to the weapons that they want, and nobody wants to talk about that. And then I want to go back to the executive orders for just a second, and then I think we can maybe move on to I want to talk about Epstein for a little bit with you, because I think you're going to have a fascinating viewpoint on this just based on your tweets. I read your tweets every day. You're one of my favorite people on not Twitter, excuse me, Blue Sky. You're not on Twitter anymore. They're all in my head. All three of the websites are one website. They're not. They're all. It's just like different flavors of vibes based on how I'm feeling. So, but on executive orders, like these executive orders, so many of them are bullshit. Like, I guess probably 80-90% of them are bullshit, unenforceable, performative nonsense. And I have zero tolerance for performative stuff. The one that pisses me off the most is the IVF one from the beginning, because Trump promised to make IVF free. And that was a big campaign promise that made a huge difference for suburban voters, particularly women that he was struggling with. And if you look at the focus group data that I've seen, it did make a difference for people who were on the fence in that. He signed one executive order and then completely abandoned it over a weekend, like a couple of weeks ago. And it's a perfect example. There's this group of people in the country who believe that he has done certain things that he hasn't fucking done anything about. And I find that to be completely disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, those are things that people are going to have to point out in the coming elections, which, by the way, we're already kicking ass in. If you look at the special elections, I think of the 53 we've had this year, we've won 51 of them, which reminds me of that statistic that you and I heard Bill Clinton utter at the Democratic National Convention about the last 52 million jobs created, 51 million have been created by Democratic administrations. And it was funny because he was like, I had to look it up. I'm not kidding. And everybody in the arena was like looking at their phones like, I'll be damned. He's right. He's fucking not lying. That's crazy. So we're doing so well in these elections. We just won a huge one in Iowa. And
forced Joni Ernst to retire, apparently.
Breaking the supermajority. Either that or she found out through focus groups that saying we're all going to die anyway isn't a good campaign message. And so now I'm wondering, though, and I know this is a little off topic, is it better for us that she's not in the race or worse for us that she's not in the race? Would she be easier to
Yeah.
beat? But I also think I think it would be great to run against her because of what she said and what she's stood for or not stood for in the last 7 or 8 months. But I also wonder about name recognition. So many people, like low information voters, and that's not an insult. There's just a lot of low information voters out there. Um, it's kind of like how I'm ignorant of, technology. If you call me that, I wouldn't be offended. It's just the way that it is. Um, so now I'm wondering if the people who vote based on name recognition and her name's not on there, if that is somehow helpful. But
Yeah.
I feel like those people would just vote for the Republican no matter who it was. But anyway, I think
Well,
that
you
it's
can I
going to
jump in
be
there for a
interesting.
second? 'Cause
Yeah.
I give you a take on Iowa, which is so Kamala lost Iowa by about 13%. Let's assume right now in this environment, we're looking at an 8 to 10% Democratic lean, right? So you can make the assumption, all right, we're maybe within 5 or 6 points in Iowa if we're lucky with a good candidate that's well funded. Governor's race is also going to be highly competitive there too, because we have a statewide Democrat that's won before. I think the question will come down to, all right, we're 5 points away in this environment from being able to make that a race. Can a very good candidate that we nominate that is well funded and a potentially bad candidate on the Republican side close that gap? I think the answer is yes. And what we also don't know is, will the economic situation get worse? Will people get more frustrated with Donald Trump? I think the Q poll had his approval rating at like 37% right now. If I had to guess, it's probably a skosh higher than that. I still think it's like probably 39, 40%, be my guess. His floor probably looks something like 33% in an environment where the economy collapses. And then if the economy like bottoms out like 2008, then it's like down to George W. Bush levels. I do think that that is a possibility, not a likelihood. I just think it's a possibility. And I think those are things that could happen maybe in time for the midterms, maybe not in time for the midterms, but something that we should be keeping an eye on, because I don't think that the size of his base, his actual MAGA base that puts up with his bullshit, is as large as people think it is. I don't think it's as large as he thinks it is. Because there's a lot of people that are like my dad who might, and if people have seen the episode with my dad, you know what I'm dealing with. But my dad's not full MAGA, but he ain't not MAGA either, right? I think my dad would abandon Trump in the right scenario. It's just he doesn't like us. And so it's got to be that it's either bad enough and we nominate good candidates so like we could get somebody like him back. Before we pivot to the next
But I
issue,
think but I think I
take
just
it,
wanna jump in there, but I think it's
please.
it's it's smaller than people think, but I think it's enough to tank the Republicans in the midterm because this isn't politics as usual. This isn't a 2010 race. This isn't a 2014 race. Since MAGA's been on the scene, they don't come down to vote in midterms. They just don't come out to vote unless Donald Trump is on the ticket, and we saw it in 2018 pretty clearly. I don't know what happened in 2022.
I mean, well,
There was
in
supposed to
in
be
22, Biden was president, so
there
people
was
were coming out
supposed
to
to be a
vote.
massive red wave,
Yeah.
and I think that was blocked. So but now we're back to this particular scenario, and having to redistrict in California and fighting back in those ways. But the problem is that his base is small, but the problem for him is that his base is small, but it's big enough to tank him when they don't show up because he's not on the ticket.
Yeah, I think that's right. Before we transition to the next topic, I want to thank the 1,700 people who are here. We're really glad to have you. I'm Democratic strategist Mike Nellis. This is my guest, Allison Gill, who is amazing, and you should definitely subscribe to her Substack and follow her on other platforms. Mueller, she wrote. Did I say it right this time? Finally, I feel like I'm like
Mueller, she wrote.
Mueller, she wrote. God damn it! I can't. It's like trapped in my head, and then I'm 1.8 now. Thank you, Paula. Really excited, everybody. If you could please hit the like button. I feel like the group already knows what I'm going to ask for. Hit the like button to help it push up the algorithm for us. If you're willing to become a paid subscriber to either of us, $8 a month, I think for both of us. Alice, you correct me if I'm wrong about yours. I just assume you're at default like I am. So let's transition to the next topic, which I think presents a pretty big crisis, existential crisis for the MAGA movement, for Donald Trump, for the future of it, which is Epstein and the Epstein cover.
Epstein.
And this is my favorite topic to talk about. Sometimes the show is just the law firm of Epstein, and more Epstein when I have guests on. But I think for Donald Trump, he's in so much political danger on the economy alone, but he built the backbone of the MAGA movement on conspiracy theories. And so when you do that and you promise people that you're going to expose the corrupt billionaire cabal that's out there stealing children away and Hillary Clinton's drinking their blood and shit, and you don't do that, and it turns out you're a part of it, a lot of those people tend to get turned off. And I think you see that pretty consistently on social media where there are people who are really turned off by that, and there are people who are saying, I may never vote again because now I don't believe, like I chose to believe. And where we're at on Epstein is Congress is back in session next week. They closed Congress to run away from this. Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie have Epstein victims who are coming next week, so this is not going to go away. Comer's meeting with them. Speaker Johnson today admitted that there will probably have to be a vote on Epstein in the full Congress. I don't know what the Senate's going to do, but this is going to be a big issue. And Allison, what do you expect to see next week as we really re-engage in the Epstein conversation again?
Well, aside from everything that you've said, we've also got a subpoena issued now, an official subpoena issued to the Epstein estate for the birthday book. At first, it was just Ro Khanna politely asking, but they were able to get the votes to issue an actual subpoena. And I think that's crucial because that would come directly from the estate of Jeffrey Epstein, not through this Department of Justice, which, as we know, and as we've had proof of through reporting, they are scrubbing those Epstein files for Trump's name. And so at least and probably others. And so I think, so everyone's aware, they were actually putting out, the Department of Justice was actually putting out training videos on how to seek out and redact Trump's name from the Epstein files. And me and my lawyers at National Security Counselors, Kel McClanahan, have filed a Freedom of Information Act request lawsuit to get those training videos from the Department of Justice.
Right.
And whether we get the videos or not, we'll see if it'll be interesting to see if they say, we have the videos, but we're not giving them to you, or we don't know what you're talking about. So that's one thing that's going on there. And then, of course, we still haven't seen the cooperation agreement between Ghislaine Maxwell and Todd Blanche. We haven't seen the transfer agreement. You can anybody who thinks that Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyer, Mr. Marcus, didn't get it in writing that she could be transferred to a minimum security prison and have her sex offender status waived, would be a weird thought exercise. But we still haven't seen that, the transfer. We haven't figured out who waived the sex offender status. We haven't found out who, by waiving the sex offender status, gave her out custody status, which makes her eligible to do jobs outside the prison walls, all stuff that I reported on on my Substack. And so I am going to be looking for that, and I am definitely going to be listening to the survivors, because at every step of this process, going back to the sweetheart deal that Alex Acosta, who ended up being Trump's labor secretary, got that sweetheart deal and was rewarded by being, placed as the labor secretary in Trump's first administration. That sweetheart deal written by Alan Dershowitz, who can't get a pierogi in Martha's Vineyard. I think those are the things that are going to kind of come to a head, right? So, but the survivors have been left out of this process because that sweetheart deal, they weren't told about that. They weren't told about the transfer of Ghislaine Maxwell. They weren't told when the Department of Justice went looking for a 76-page grand jury transcript from the court in the Epstein case to satisfy the base of, we're trying to get the Epstein files. No, you're not. And all the judges saw through it. But the victim survivors have been left out of this every step of the way. So I'm so very glad that they're going to get a chance to speak. I'm going to be listening to every word that they have to say. And I'm also going to be reading Virginia Giuffre's posthumous book that is supposed to come out in October, because these victims deserve to have their voices heard.
Yeah, and can I just say, one, I love your sense of humor and the way that like wry comments just like fly out immediately that are just like catching, like Alan Dershowitz just catches strays for his inability to get a pierogi is pretty damn good.
It's
I
10
want
years
to.
as a stand-up comic, probably. That's
I respect it. For me, it's being an improv kid when I was in high school and college. That's
yes,
where
and
playing Dungeons and Dragons and shit like that.
that'll help too. D&D helps. I'm
D&D
telling you.
does help. It is good. We should put like a D&D game together with like content creators and shit. I think that'd be fun. I want to address a comment in here from Robert, and I want to get your take on it. I'm going to add mine as well, which is Robert says, to spend this much time on Epstein is obscene. It is nothing but a sideshow. Earlier, you said you did not want the Democratic Party to become the Republican Party. Then why are you talking about this issue? So I'll give my take, and then Allison, I want to hear yours, which is my view of this is that one, when I say I don't want the Democratic Party to become a version of the Republican Party, it means that I don't want us to be fueled by grievances. I want us to continue to be fueled by how we improve people's day-to-day lives. And my biggest fear is Trump does so much horrible shit that when we get back into power, we are so committed to getting back at them for how they have hurt us and how they have trolled us and how they have targeted us that we become a party of grievances ourselves and forget how we're trying to help people. And that's what's really important to me. On Epstein, I believe Epstein to be a really important issue, not just because it is a politically bad issue for Donald Trump, which it absolutely is, but because we have this opportunity to hold the rich and the powerful accountable for their crimes. And I think that part of the reason that so many people have disengaged from our politics is in part because what happened in 2008 in the financial crisis, tens of millions of Americans lost their homes, tens of millions of Americans had their lives ruined, and nobody went to prison for that. And if we have a justice system that says somebody who's carrying a small amount of marijuana who gets picked up by the wrong cop goes to prison for years, and somebody who defrauds people out of their entire life savings and ruins their life never goes to prison, or somebody can do what Jeffrey Epstein did, what Ghislaine Maxwell did, what Diddy did, can get away with it, that's not okay. And look, I don't know what Donald Trump did or didn't do. I won't pretend like I don't. But what I do know is that there are a lot of rich and powerful people in those files, and there are likely Democrats in there, and there's likely Republicans in there, and they both deserve to be held accountable for that. I refuse to accept the idea that we can have 1,000 victims in the Epstein files, and only 2 people will ever be held accountable for it, one of whom never even made it to trial. And I refuse to accept that, and I'm going to stay on it because I believe it's an important way that we can reshape accountability in America and the justice system. Allison, I want to hand it back to you now. After I ranted there, I apologize.
No, no, I'm gonna yes and you, my improv friend.
Yes, let's go.
Saying that Epstein is a sideshow, I'm assuming you mean a sideshow from authoritarianism, a sideshow from the oligarchy. But what I submit to you is that it's actually part of it. Like you're saying, Mike, because we've got Leon Black giving Epstein $150 million. We've got $1.5 billion in flagged transactions at 3 major banks, including Deutsche Bank, for example, as Senator Ron Wyden has uncovered. We've got the abuse of bodies, okay, of people's bodies, of people's autonomy. And that is true whether you're talking about what the wealthy did and the oligarchs did to the Epstein survivors, or whether you're talking about somebody who's working in a coal mine for ducats and can't get health care until they die early and never get to get a bit of their Social Security. Or we're talking about people who sign up to join the military because they have been economically oppressed for so long and college is unaffordable that they have to do that. And now they find themselves picking up garbage in the Capitol, spending time away from their families and their second and third jobs. 35,000 of our active duty service members are on SNAP benefits, which have been gutted. So I don't see Epstein as separate from the oligarchs. I see it as wholly integral to the top versus bottom as opposed to left versus right. And I think that's why so many people on either side of the aisle are upset about it and want to get at the truth, because there is a cabal of very rich people doing terrible things, whether it's through abusing workers or whether it's through abusing survivors like this. They're connected. And I don't see much of a difference between that proffer session between Todd Blanche and Ghislaine Maxwell and the summit between Putin and Donald Trump having our soldiers on their knees rolling out a red carpet for that murderous dictator. I don't see much of a difference between those meetings. And so that's why I think it's important. And also so that the survivors can have a sounding board.
The threat is there. The threat is there, I think, between all those issues. And I think that's incredibly well said. I think the other thing, too, is what does it say about our society if we don't care to get justice for these victims, to make sure that they have an opportunity to have their day in court and at least hold some amount of these people accountable? Because either Donald Trump is covering up for himself or he's covering up for other people. And I believe the answer is probably both, but I won't know until I see it.
But I do want to say it's a good question, and it's a valid question, because there are so many things that are going on right now. There is just a fire hose of shit. Flood the zone with shit is the way that it's been put by Steve Bannon. That it's hard to know what should be paid attention to and what shouldn't be paid attention to. And I'm not going to sit here and tell somebody that you need to pay attention to this because it's important and here's why I think it is. But it is what I'm going to say and talk about and continue to talk about and continue to investigate through, by talking to people who work in the federal government and are forced to go through these files. So I think a lot of people, don't think about that too. These files weren't labeled, my sources told me. And so there were people in there, including sexual assault survivors, who would have to look through these files, open up a file not knowing what's in it, and be hit in the face with videos of the most horrific abuse that you can think of against minors. So I do appreciate the question. I don't want whoever asked that to think that that's not a valid question because of all the things that we have to keep in our mind at one time, which is by design.
Yeah. Yeah. And Robert, I appreciate the question. So please don't take it as if I seemed mad. I was only mad at the zeitgeist, I guess, or society writ large. But it's a lot like the shooting in Minnesota. It's if we're not going to take care of our kids, then we don't care about our kids. If we're not going to take care of young girls who were victimized by rich people, then we don't care about them. And I refuse to accept that. I just fucking I can't get over it. I think that's maybe a good transition point to get into the next topic. Before we do that, I want to thank the 2,100 of you who are here. This is a massive crowd for Friday afternoon. We are here with my guest, Allison Gill. I am Mike Nellis, Democratic strategist. I appreciate everybody for being here. Please make sure that you take a moment to subscribe to both of our Substacks if you're new to either of us. Allison, I think a lot more people know who you are than know who I am. But please, subscribe to both of us and become a paid subscriber if you're willing to support the work that both of us are doing. Allison is so dogged when it comes to holding the Trump administration and these fascists accountable. I tend to stay very focused on having as candid conversations as I can to reduce the gap between Democratic politicians, activists, and regular people to help explain what the fuck is going on in this country most days.
Yeah.
And so on. Oh, take it. Did you have something?
I was just going to say, and if you are experiencing, I see a lot of people are saying we're experiencing sensory overload.
Yeah.
The podcast that I host is called The Daily Beans, where I go through the fire hose of shit for you and filter out the news that I think is important. And I bring it in a way that's not, adversarial or in your face. I don't have Scott Jennings on my show, for example. And we add appropriate profanity, and it's brought from a point of lived experience. We don't leave that at the door. And so a lot of people say, you help keep me informed and also keep me sane. So if you're interested in getting all the news that's fit to swear about, the Daily Beans is probably a good place to grab it.
I mean, appropriate profanity is a pretty good name for a podcast or a newsletter. So you should jot that down. That's pretty good. So I want to, on the, and this will be a good entry point, I think, for our next topic is on sensory overload. I had two things to start with. One, go watch the episode if you haven't with Katie Fang and I. We had an episode on Tuesday where we didn't talk about politics. We talked about everything but politics, but kids, life, family, how we deal with the news. I talked a lot about kayaking and spending time with friends. Like, I think that was just a good. I love Katie. So she's such a good human being. I love her. But I have barely followed the mess at the CDC this week. I have literally, I've been so upset about what is happening in Minnesota and so upset about the conversation over prayer and all this other shit. As a Catholic, I'm really upset about what happened to that church and to those kids when they were praying at a Catholic church. And I barely know what's going on with the CDC and Allison. I was kind of hoping you could walk me through it a little bit and help me understand it. Because I know the top lines. I know how bad RFK Jr. is. I know that a lot of people are leaving. But I was kind of hoping we could start there because I've been so sensory overloaded this week that I've barely been on top of that one.
Yeah, it was hard. It was hard for me too. My elementary school, I went in the Midwest in a town called Talmadge outside of Akron. I went to an Annunciation Catholic school. And it was like, I thought back to my time at school and how I can't imagine that being a something that it's something I didn't have to think about. And I'm so sad that our kids today have to always be in fear of that. That blows my mind. It was very upsetting. But with regard to the CDC, okay, so apparently, Donald Trump or RFK Jr. wanted to get rid of the woman who they had just brought in, who the Senate just confirmed to run the CDC. But then, and then they made Health and Human Services made an announcement on Twitter, because that's their official government thing now, I guess, is to announce things on Twitter, saying she's gone. We got rid of her. And then Mark Zaid, who a lot of folks know represents a lot of whistleblowers, and he works at Whistleblower Aid, went on social media and said, "No, my client has not been fired. She works at the pleasure of the president because she was confirmed on advice and consent of the Senate, and only the president can fire her, and he hasn't." So there's that. And then meanwhile, all these other top level officials tendered their resignations. One of them, I'm sure you've read that letter.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, about his resignation. One of the doctors there. And it was a very poignant and pointed letter. I recommend everybody read it. But a lot of folks resigned. It was a kind of like a Saturday Night Massacre, but at the CDC, and it was midweek. And then after that, we had a walkout of the employees. I think on Thursday, and then they clapped out their fellow employees. But this is really actually shaking up a lot of things. It's actually making, who was the doctor, the senator, the Republican, Hollis or something? Has
Yeah.
mm,
Who was, like, really worried about it? Yeah, I know
yeah,
who you're talking about, but
the guy who was like, he publicly agonized over it, but then voted for RFK Jr. anyway.
yeah.
Somebody will, Cassidy. There you go. I'm
Yes,
like,
okay.
somebody knows. Somebody will correct me.
I kept wanting to
Together,
go Louisiana. I had Kennedy in my mind, but I was like, "Oh, and Kennedy, that doesn't make sense."
together, all 2,200 of us know everything, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But he's even like, "Oh no, what have I done?" Susan Collins is extremely concerned, which
We've
is
reached a new level on the Susan Collins bullshit meter.
right, extremely concerned.
She's useless.
I don't know if you can furrow your brow enough to become extremely concerned. But this is actually hitting some Republicans in the Senate, and a lot of people are calling for investigations about what's happening. And all this comes on the heels of RFK Jr. Replacing the vaccine board, and then actually reviving an old board to look into the dangers of vaccines rather than the recommendations. And that is just antithetical to public health. People are going to die. I am no longer eligible for the COVID booster based on the new FDA recommendations. Um, and the thing that frightens me a little bit is there's a long list of things, because you have to be over 65 or you have to have a pre-existing condition. Like you have to have been a smoker, or you have to have. Actually, I think I smoked a cigarette when I was in the Navy, so maybe I do qualify. But depression is on there, and all this list of ailments that will allow you to get a vaccine. And what the first thing I thought of is, do I tell my provider that I have one of these pre-existing conditions to get the vaccine, only later to be kicked off my plan or charged a higher premium because I have said that I have a pre-existing
Yep.
condition? Or are they keeping, these are eugenics weirdos too, these guys. Are they keeping a list of people who have mental health issues so that, a government list? Like, I've never had to think about this stuff before. I feel like I need a tinfoil hat sometimes, but Big Balls McGinty has my social security number and my application to get one, and along with 300 other million Americans. So I don't think it's too far-fetched to worry about things like that.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, just from the, like, average reaction to talking about mental health, on the internet, when I've had depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation in my life. I'm on the other side of it. I've shared my story pretty publicly online. When you share that stuff on X, the shit that people say about you is insane. It's just absolutely insane. Like, that I'm a mental case and I'm crazy and I should have my child taken away from me and that I shouldn't be allowed to, like, drive a car. And I'm like, you guys don't even know what you're talking about. Like, I mean, it's just, there's no frame of reference. There's no empathy for it. So to your point, I worry about that too, and I want to shout out Cynthia, because Cynthia was calling out Senator Tina Smith's response to RFK. I have not seen it, but knowing Tina Smith, and Tina Smith is a client of mine, I know that it will be absolutely delightful. And I'm simultaneously really sad that she's leaving the Senate, but very proud of her for giving space for other people to do it. And by the way, next week I'm going to have Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Minnesota, Peggy Flanagan, on to talk about some of this stuff, and she's running for United States Senate to replace Tina Smith, and I think she would be just a phenomenal choice. The situation,
Someone asked, I just want to interject about how do we do a
please.
class action lawsuit against the Social Security Administration? You would need to get standing, and in order to do that, you have to show that there's been a harm. So you have to wait until something terrible happens to your fraudulent happens before before you can bring a suit like that. So that's the answer to that question. I just saw that and I wanted to throw that out there.
There's also broad discretion, I think, and you're a much smarter legal mind than I am on what government officials and what like public officials can do and can say, which is why like I couldn't like, I wanted to go after Jim Jordan after he used the House Judiciary Committee to come after me, and there was like very limited options for what I could do, and like the success rate was so low, I was like, I got fuck it.
Yeah, and
But
emotional distress isn't something you can just sue based solely on. That's something that you tack on to an actual harm that
yeah,
causes emotional distress, to answer that.
that's right. It would be like you lost a client, or you lost your job, or your information was used to cause harm.
Right. Or you were
But
fired from the first Trump administration and that caused emotional distress. I
yes,
don't know anything about that, though.
yeah, right. Well, unfortunately, there's a large network of people who know a lot of things about that. That include you, unfortunately, I have to imagine if there's an alumni group, it would be pretty. It would be pretty
Litigation
lit.
pending. My case goes to trial in January.
Oh my gosh. Well, good luck. We're all going to be pulling for you. The thing about RFK, and this is actually what drives me crazy, and actually my most viral tweet that I've ever sent was pointing something like this out, is what Democrats tried to move things forward in a healthier direction on many things. And like Michelle Obama made school lunches a central part of something that she worked on. And Republicans called her a fucking communist. Like they were just like, she's a communist and a terrible person. And she's trying to tell you kid what they can eat at lunch. And that was bad. And RFK Jr. comes in, makes this unholy alliance with Donald Trump. And the bottom third of what RFK Jr. believes in is roughly right, where it's like we should get red dye out of stuff, and these pharmaceutical companies are doing X, Y, and Z, and that's bad, and that's right. So they've got a lot of people suckering in on that. But then like the top 60-70% of shit that he believes in is insane. Just absolutely insane. We got to get fluoride out of the water, and we can't have cancer research for kids, and we can't have vaccines. And it's so ridiculous to me. And one of the political things that I'm trying to solve for is how do we retake the narrative on this? Because I have to think regular people, and I know regular people don't engage in this the way that you and I and the other 2,300 of us who are watching this do, have to be going, what the fuck is going on here? And how do I keep my kids safe? And how do I make sure they get the vaccines that they need? And how do I stay safe? And if you're a senior, you're trying to figure out how to extend your life and your health span. And like, it's so confusing what's happening. I don't even know how to process it. As somebody with a pre-existing condition, and continues to try to work on myself and my body, I don't even know how to react to what's going on.
Yeah, listen to your doctors. And if you have a nurse practitioner as a primary care provider, even better. Um, uh, but yeah, no, you're right. The bottom third, okay. Top 2/3. I mean, he's got people out here buying ivermectin and having lampreys suck
Yeah.
ghosts out of your blood. Uh, he was addicted to heroin for 12 years, and no shade to addicts and recovering addicts, but I'm not sure that you should be in charge of Health and Human Services. So, or at least trying to tell me that my SSRIs are bad for me,
Right.
right? It's kind of like when Falwell Jr. was found fucking the pool boy with his wife, and everyone's like, don't kink shame him. And I'm like, I'm not. That's literally the coolest thing about him. The problem is he's trying to tell other people who live those lifestyles that they're going to
Yeah,
hell.
that's right.
It's the
That's right.
hypocrisy, right? So it's like, that's literally the coolest thing about it. But I'm with RFK Jr., the fact that he has so much influence on our health, and the fact that the law firm that sues people for harm caused by vaccines and gets a lot of settlements from big pharma, even though there's no evidence. It's kind of like a cost of doing business to big pharma. It's just like,
Right.
here's $1 million, go away, because otherwise we would spend $3 million litigating this. He used to work for that law firm. He used to make millions of dollars doing
Mhm.
this, and now they sued him to set up this anti-vax panel, and he settled with them to do so. And they are getting money, he's getting a kickback, and he's putting together this anti-vax panel. It's all about money. No one cares about how many people die. They see us in this, like I said, they're eugenics weirdos. They see us as not the fittest. And the reason that they didn't do anything about the measles outbreak in Texas is they're like, let the disease flow through everybody. And the people who die, they weren't fit to live in the first place. That's how they see us. They call us human capital stock. They want kids to work in factories. I mean, that's what when I talk about abusing our bodies, that's part of it, right?
Yeah.
They want to control every aspect of us from head to toe. And so I think that's, again, and that brings us back to, the top versus the bottom, the problem with the oligarchs in this country and the ruling class, is that's what we are to them. We're fodder.
Yeah. Yeah, we're coal
Or
to be
labor.
shoveled. Yeah, we're coal to be shoveled into a furnace, I think is really what it is, just to make it as dirty as possible and as pollution oriented as possible, since they don't care about that either.
How
You
can
know,
they
the
believe in survival of the fittest, though, if they don't believe in evolution? That's the only thing that confuses me.
well, I mean, that's the kind of thing where it's like, what do they actually believe? Like, I mean, half the shit that they say they don't actually believe. So, like, I don't even know. I mean, the thing about Donald Trump is like he's situational. He'll believe whatever is necessary for him in the room that he's in, which is kind of makes him predictable in the right circumstances. But and he's such a bizarre guy. The other thing about RFK Jr. is, and I say this to somebody, and for folks that don't know me, like I used to weigh 600 pounds. I had massive food addiction issues, and I've gotten down to like I'm actually 338 as of this morning. So I did my weekly weigh in.
Okay.
Since however many pounds that is, 200 almost 270 at that point. And thank you. And one of the biggest things is they've got nothing to say about added sugar in anything or any of these other like sugar preservatives or replacements that they put in there. And like that is probably the greatest driver of cancer and obesity in this country.
Well,
And
was
they've
it
got nothing.
Bloomberg that tried to ban, like, massive giant sodas in New York, and the
Yeah.
Republican Party was like, "Nanny state, you keep your filthy government mitts off of my big gulp," or whatever.
Can I actually, on that point, can I make the case though? I think from like an American constitutional standpoint, you have a right to drink a big gulp as large as you want. I think the government should put a warning on it, maybe like cigarettes. Like that's the thing is like and this is maybe like a role of government. We only have like a couple minutes left, so I don't want to like go down this full rabbit hole. But like I always think about it like I opposed the soda bans. I don't like them because I think you have a right to drink a big gulp if you want one. With cigarettes, it's like when you smoke, you can get other people you can give other people cancer through secondhand smoke and thirdhand smoke. So you should ban them in restaurants. Like there's just sort of like a divide there. But we're in a world where we can't even have a conversation over the role of government and what it should be doing and shouldn't be doing because we're spending all day going, please don't militarize Chicago. Nobody wants you here. And are all mass shooters trans? Like that's like a conversation we have to have with these people because they're so far gone. We can't talk about like basic solutions to actual problems that people are facing.
Yeah.
Um,
If,
yeah.
by the way, I disappear, it's because I ran out of battery. These
Okay.
Substack lives I love, but they just chug your
They
battery.
they absolutely drain the battery. I started at 90%. I'm at 40% in 50 minutes. That's
I'm at
crazy.
15.
Let's actually take this. It's a good moment to like close. So, Allison, I want to give you the final word. Anything else you want to add and then tell people where to find you?
I just want to thank you for having me on and thank you for what you do. I think it's very important that all of us, if you're able to grab a microphone and tell your story, I think our lived experiences are important. I think the human experience is important, and I think it might help be what propels us ahead. If you can get involved on Prop 50 in California, if you can help us postcard or text bank or phone bank, please do that. We need all the help that we can get to counter what's going on in Texas. And like I said, if you want to find me, you can listen to the Daily Beans podcast. It's free. MullerSheWrote.com is my Substack. It's free. Everything I do is free. I got a ton of podcasts. They're all free to listen to. And just listening is an act of resistance and an act of supporting independent media. So that's all.
And Allison's one of my heroes on this because she could be putting everything behind a paywall, but she refuses to, which is one of the reasons I also refuse to do it too. Maybe someday in the future I'll come up with some clever way to do paywall content, but I'd rather just chat with all of you because I think this is way more fun than getting my upside up on the profit front. Allison, you're amazing. Thank you for coming. To anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Democratic strategist Mike Nellis. This is my Substack, Endless Urgency. You can find it at endlessurgency.com. I go live every day with a guest like Allison at 5 o'clock Eastern. And then my content is completely free. I'm going to do my best to never charge for it, but it's $8 a month if you'd like to become a paid subscriber and help to support this work. Please make sure that you follow Allison and her work and her podcast and become a paid subscriber if you can. And thank you to the 2,400 of you who are watching this now. Thank you to the hundreds of thousands that I know will watch this later. We appreciate you. Please enjoy your weekend. Put your phone down. Don't doom scroll all weekend. That's what they want you to do. Go watch some college football, spend time with your family, grill a burger, do whatever you do that makes you feel like you're in community. And we love you all, and we'll talk soon. Allison, thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike.